A week ago, I gave my 5 non-negotiables for the four nations to be a major success, and they were as follows. The best players had to be the best players at the tournament, and Sidney Crosby leads the entire tournament in points, so I'll give myself a check here. I also said that this tournament couldn't be Canada-dominated, and it certainly wasn't. They barely made the finals. Bit of a heart attack Monday afternoon, but hey, that plays into the other one where I said that the final games of the round robin had to matter. Canada-Finland definitely did. It was winning in, and Finland almost pulled off the craziest comeback in hockey history, but because of that, the Sweden-USA game didn't draw as many eyeballs, so I'll give this one like half a check. Next, I did say that the final had to be Canada-USA, and bang. If it was any other matchup, people would not be nearly as interested. You might not even be watching this show right now. But last but not least, and this was like the most important one here, was that nobody was supposed to get hurt, and well, that didn't exactly go to plan. Shea Theodore is out long term. Both the Tkachuks are banged up, and now Charlie McAvoy is out for the remainder of the tournament. But while this should be a negative, it's also setting up for a potential Quinn Hughes, Undertaker, coming out of the coffin moment. Come on, the only thing Canada and USA were missing on Saturday was the top 2 defensemen in the entire league, Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes, and now we might just get it. With that, welcome into Top Shelf Face-Off Edition, brought to you guys by Enterprise. I'm Aidan Thakkar with John Matisz, who is back here from Montreal, and Levi Smith. No, Kyle Cushman today. Unfortunately, we might need Quinn Hughes as the injury replacement for him. So if Hughes wants to play, they need another injury or illness. Somebody can't play. Similar situation when Thomas Harley joined the Canadian group. And obviously, he played in that game because Cale Makar didn't. So Canada's missing their top defenseman. This game would be better with Quinn Hughes in it, 100%. Even as a Canadian guy, I'd rather see Quinn Hughes in this tournament. Do you guys think like Sanderson or Hannafin's going to get a little flu bug tomorrow?
Yeah, do they go have some sushi and it just happens to be, a little contaminated or something? I mean, that would be pretty sketchy and like, I don't know. It's not fair to those other guys, right? But, I mean, stranger things have happened. Like, this tournament's been just kind of development after development as far as the injuries, as far as the NHL just making up the rules as they go along here. So, would it surprise me if, he takes warm-up and is sort of a game-time decision, and he ends up on the bench to start the game? That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the Cale Makar-Harley situation, the fact that we're like, Canada definitely would have preferred Makar over Thomas Harley. It's a different situation because the U.S. is like, oh, Quinn Hughes can play now. That'd be kind of cool. We might want him in the game, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait to see. I would love to see both Hughes and Makar, obviously, in that game.
Well, I appreciate it, too, that Quinn is coming to Boston in general because he gets to celebrate with his teammates. Like, this guy, could be dominating the tournament if he wasn't hurt, right? So, his brother's on the team. He knows a ton of guys on the team. Even if he's just there for, for win or loss, like I think it's kind of like cool that it shows his investment. Coming in this tournament, we're all like, are the players going to be invested? The games have shown that they 100% are. And then you've got a guy who's injured, presumably not 100%, flying across the country when his team's about to start practicing again to be with these national team members. It says a lot.
How much too do you think that stems from seeing that first Canada USA game? Because my thought was, I watched that game and the first thing I thought was, I bet Alex Pietrangelo wishes he didn't do what he did. Because I think anybody, regardless of how you feel or whatever going into the tournament, watching that game, like there's not a guy in the NHL who wouldn't have wanted to play in that game. So I'm sure Pietrangelo was probably sick to his stomach that he opted out of this thing. And Quinn Hughes is like, maybe he was just ready to nurse a little bit. And he's like, I kind of want to get out there, actually. So I think the way that everyone's responded to playing in this tournament, especially, is just driving that forward for a guy like Quinn Hughes to come back and play.
I will say, if Hughes doesn't play, I think we're not really talking about how big of a potential loss Charlie McAvoy is to that team.
Yes.
Because McAvoy was fantastic against McDavid, against all those high-flying forwards for Canada. And not having him, like Sanderson's good, Hannafin's good, but Quinn Hughes would be a great offensive replacement, but you would be losing that like stalwart. He is definitely probably their number 2 defensive guy after Slavin, but lots of injuries right now in that room. Tkachuk brothers both banged up, but projected to play at this point, as reported. Same with Matthews. Sounds like he's going to go, but Quinn Hughes, that's the question mark right now, and I think it'd be really interesting if he does go.
Yeah, it's interesting with the U.S., right, where all these injuries are piling up. But they've been they've probably been the most aggressive team in the tournament. You see them giving 100% even against Sweden when that game didn't matter towards the standings. Brady Tkachuk, he gets injured on a play when he's driving the net. And, he played like 2 minutes and had however many hits. There's a whole highlight pack just from those 2 minutes. These guys care. And after that Canada-US game, the first one, I pulled Zach Werenski aside, like when he was done with his media, and I'm like, "What does your phone look like right now?" Because I saw him put his phone in his pocket on his way up to the podium, and you just you see people out in the world enough where you're like, "Oh, he was just like buried in his phone looking at the messages." And he said, "Hey, I got the usual family and friends. Oh, great job, all that kind of stuff, the typical stuff." But he got a ton from both rivals and teammates across the NHL, where the guys said, like, that was incredible. Like, they were kind of the NHLers that weren't in this tournament were feeling the same way all of us were feeling, where it was like, I can't believe we haven't played, best on best in this long, and I can't believe how intense this is, how fast paced it is. That start where the 3 fights in 9 seconds. So I think that's a window into the success of this tournament. That there's guys on the outside who didn't make the team that are like all fired up, and also are going out of their way to message guys right after the game or maybe even during the game that, like, I can't believe you were a part of that. I wish I was a part of that. And this is so good for growing the sport, because there were people that came out of the woodwork to watch this game. Just to throw a couple names out there that got a lot of traction online in terms of their interactions and their posts. Like Bill Simmons, a massive media figure. He never talks about hockey. He's going on about how, this is way better than the NBA All-Star game. You've got J.J. Watt, former NFL player, popping off on Twitter about how this is the best thing the NHL's done in years. You've got the Dan Patrick Show. Again, these are all like really big American figures getting behind this tournament and saying the NHL did this right and they made the right choice.
John Cooper even said today that like this tournament has done more for hockey than anything else they've done over the last decade. It's been awesome. And you can tell the players want to win it. I think there's pressure on both sides. Obviously, there's pressure on the Canadian side because you lose 2 in a row to the Americans, and it's like, oh, you lost a tournament to the Americans? Like, that hasn't happened in a long time. But then it also, like, these U.S. players, it seems like there's, like, a lot of pressure here. Dylan Larkin was talking about how he felt like he hasn't won anything in a long time, and then he was, in this quote, he was saying, like, I haven't won anything in a while. Like, I want to win so badly. Then you got Brady Tkachuk talking about how the Canada-U.S. game on Saturday was the biggest game he played in his career. Well, how about this game? It's even bigger already. The stakes are even higher Thursday than they were a few days ago. So I don't know. What do you guys think? The pressure bigger on the States or Canada?
I mean, I'll start. It's so tough to say. I think it's Canada because of what we've discussed before on this show, where it's like that's the staple for international hockey. They haven't really lost ever. You look back at the last few Olympics, at least with this kind of generation, at the very least, and they've been the top dog for so long in the States. I mean, like the last Olympics, the States weren't even in the finals. So I think just Canada kind of giving up that crown puts the most pressure on them. But you can easily argue that it's still on the States for having to go out and take that crown. Like, they've never really been this close, probably since the 2010 Olympics, where even though Canada won that in overtime, I don't know, felt like they were always destined to win. So I think both sides have a lot of pressure. I'd probably lean more on Canada for just trying to maintain.
I'm on the same wavelength, where it's like the up-and-comers are the U.S. They're the team that the little brothers that are like, hey, we're itching towards being the big brother. We're trying to take over the hockey world, and we saw that in the first matchup where they were the initiators of those 3 fights. Yeah. They were, extra physical, although Canada was also physical. And they just think that it's, Matthew Tkachuk said, it's our time. Like, it's our time right now. Like, they feel very motivated. And I guess there's less I just think there's less pressure, because if you're the team that's the favorite, like Canada is at least like on paper in terms of the star power, then, hey, it's your tournament to lose, right? And I just think also, like, just to look at it from like a legacy perspective, I mean, Sidney Crosby will presumably play in the Olympics next year, but like maybe this is the last time we see him, and it's the first time he's playing with McDavid on best. Like, I feel like there's some pressure in terms of Canadian culture, whatever you want to call it, for them to come through here, whereas the Americans are just like, this has been a wild ride, and let's try to finish it off.
I'll say too, like, as a Canadian, this is the first time, like, I'm feeling pressure. It's the first time I've watched any best on best hockey where I see the team on the other side and I'm like, I don't know if we can do this. Like, we normally have all of the guys, and even if it's tight, you just know you've got Sidney Crosby on the team and stuff, Jonathan Toews, all those guys back in the day. This is the first time I'm watching a game and I'm like they've got, I think, better guys than we do.
Well, I would say the utmost confidence, the reason it doesn't feel like it felt in 2016 or 2014 or 2010 is because in those tournaments it was Carey Price, it was Martin Brodeur, it was Roberto Luongo. And the big talking point this tournament for Canada has been that it has been Jordan Binnington. And Binnington has by no means been bad in this tournament. I think that is unfair to say to him that he has been a bad goaltender. But on Saturday, he was the worst of the two goaltenders when you compare him and Connor Hellebuyck. I've seen a lot of people kind of giving him flack online, whose fault was it? Was it his fault? Do you guys agree that Jordan Binnington was at fault in that game, or do you think that's unfair considering Canada only scored one goal?
I mean, he was slightly at fault, I suppose. Like that Gensel goal, you probably want back. It was a deceptive shot, but you talk to enough goalies and they'll say like you got to have that.
Yeah.
The Larkin goal, I feel like he's coming in a mile a minute, 100 miles a minute. I feel like that was a tougher save, and like these are both odd man rushes, so that's not easy, right? I feel like with Binnington, the word that comes to mind in terms of his performance in this tournament is fine. Like he's made some really phenomenal saves, and then he's let in a couple softies. But in terms of like, could Canada maybe go to Aidan Hill? I think that would be completely the wrong decision in terms of you've invested in Binnington. He's played well enough, and Aidan Hill's just sitting there cold. And the reason why you picked Binnington in the first place was because the other options weren't great, right? Like you kind of went with a guy who you believed in. He has a winning pedigree. He's got this competitive fire. If Martin Brodeur was sitting there, if Patrick Waugh was sitting there, by all means, pull an audible here. But I feel like doing anything but going with Binnington would be a huge mistake for Canada.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like this point, you give Binnington this game. If he wins this game, he's probably your starting goalie in Milan next year. If he loses this game, they try something else out when they go over there for the Olympics next year. But I mean, it really depends on what Binnington you get, because we've seen his level probably right now is he's someone who can win you a hockey game pretty easily, but he can also lose you a hockey game pretty easily.
Sure. Yeah.
You look at when they won the Stanley Cup, though, in that Game 7 against Boston in 2019, he put up 33 saves on 34 shots. He had a fantastic game. He can do the big moments. We know he's not scared of the big moments, but it's been 6 years since then.
I know. Well, he's got that great clip that keeps flying around where he's asked, are you nervous for this Game 7? He's like, do I look nervous? I feel like you want that guy, in your crease for this championship game. And if there was some sort of rotation through the round robin, it's like, okay, we got a discussion, but you've put all your money down for Binnington, so to speak. If you're John Cooper, and straying from that wouldn't make a ton of sense.
The thing that just drove me crazy was the Finland game, the way that ended on Monday with giving up 3 goals in the last few minutes, and it's just you're feeling so good. It's Binnington's going to put up a shutter in Game 3 of the round robin, and then it's oh my goodness, no, this is what if Thursday, if it's Canada 3-1 with 4 minutes left, it's not 3-1 with Carey Price in net. It's 3-1 with the guy that let in 2 goals to Michael Granlund.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or Marcus Granlund, right? With Mike McHale. Man, Marcus was a flame years ago. I don't know what I'm doing there. But 2 goals in the last minutes. It's it's just not the look of the vote of confidence we need right now when everyone's so up in arms about the goaltending situation.
Yeah, I think as much credit as we're giving him for we weren't expecting him to be good, he still needs to be good. And I do think he actually has been good. You hold the U.S. to 2 goals and then they scored an empty netter. You expect the guys on offense to produce a bit more than that, and they didn't. The problem is you get into another game like that where not everything's clicking on offense. You can't have him letting in those goals. So I think he's, fine is the best way to put it, and he's held his own, considering he is no Connor Hellebuyck. But, I mean, it's very clear at this point, if Canada wants to, keep their pride and stay on top, it's a full effort from the whole team, which includes him.
Yeah, he is my X factor going into that game on Thursday. In my mind, what I think is that he can't be giving up bad goals because the U.S. were so good at defending that lead.
Yes.
And if Canada loses the bad goal battle, I think they lose the game. I just think they can't. If they go down 2-0 or something like that, they're going to really struggle to get through that American defense because it is just so strong, and they were just so disciplined against Canada in that game. But I want to get into your guys' X Factor picks. I'm going to give you one per team, so you can go both. We'll start with John here. Who are the 2 players you think will play the biggest role on Thursday?
My X Factor. So for Canada, Cale Makar. For the U.S., Jack Eichel. So Cale Makar, why he's so significant to this game is because, and you mentioned it there, Aidan, Canada couldn't get to the middle of the ice towards the end of that first game against the U.S., and I feel like part of it was that they didn't have a player like Makar who can problem solve when it's, 1-on-1 or 1-on-2. and just make sure that the puck's getting into the right spaces in terms of generating those high-quality looks. And let me just read off a stat here. So in that U.S.-Canada game, slot driving plays were 34-19 for Canada. So slot driving is, a guy taking a shot from the slot or off of a pass or just bringing it in himself and taking a shot. So that's a massive advantage for Canada, right? Mm-hmm. Slot shots on net, only 14-12 for Canada. So it was obvious in the moment that they were being stymied, that the home plate area was being well protected by the U.S., but I feel like those stats really drive home that the McDavids and McKinnons, as much speed as they had, they were being outnumbered and being pressured, and the Jacob Slavins of the world and Charlie McAvoy's and Austin Matthews were all getting in their way too much. And it got a little frustrating. I don't know if you guys heard it on the broadcast, but in the building there was a lot of shoot, and that sort of stuff from the crowd. And, in a way you're like, okay, yeah, get the puck on net, but what is a point shot in the modern NHL, right? It's got no chance of going in. So Cale Makar and his dynamic playing style is just a massive addition to this Canadian team against the U.S. in this rematch. And then Jack Eichel. So he's kind of the adult on this line, right, with the Tkachuk brothers. They're bringing their antics. He's bringing speed. He's bringing two-way ability. He's got 4 assists. He's been arguably the U.S.'s best forward in this tournament. And I just feel like when you look back on his trajectory since he got in Vegas, it just keeps pointing up. He's become, he's not Selke trophy caliber defensive player, but like he's in and around there in terms of a guy who can do it at both ends and has that sort of speed and power game. He has a playmaking and shooting game. I just feel like he really unlocks a ton, especially with that line where you've got Brady and Matthew who like to mix it up around the net, and Eichel's doing a lot of the other work. So those two guys jump off the page for me.
Yeah. I think though, like Cale Makar especially, I don't think people really understand how much of a difference he's about to make. But those are two guys for sure who they're the focal points of their teams, and they're very, right there in your face. If they're making a difference, they're X factors. You're gonna see it. I went with a couple guys who have kind of had more background roles so far in this tournament. To Mitch Marner's credit, he's been scoring a little bit, but Jack Hughes has 1 assist. So those are my two guys where both of these teams, they need a second level of offense to win this game. It's not going to be the top-heavy guys. You look at Canada, half of their points in this tournament have come from McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, and they've got 6 of their 9 goals. So if Canada wants any hope of having a second kind of offensive push and are looking for it to come elsewhere from guys that aren't even playing with them, I think it has to be Mitch Marner, because we've seen what he can do with the way he can pass and the way he can score. He can do that by himself with the guys around him. So that's my pick for Canada. And then, Jack Hughes. He's got 10 shots on net, nothing to show for it, 1 assist. This is one of the best offensive players in the NHL, one of the game's promising young stars. I know this American team has some older guys who are doing the heavy lifting a lot more, but having a guy like Jack Hughes on your team who hasn't really had an outburst at all this tournament, just the potential that he brings to this game. If he lights the lamp once or finds a couple guys for some assists, he can really change this American offense. So those are my 2 X factors. I think they're the guys to look out for.
I like them. I like both your picks. Take kind of different angles at it. You're going with the stars. You're going with kind of like those. They're not third line players. Let's be completely fair. These are like some of the most elite players in the league, but third line on the respective teams or second line, kind of in that middle 6 spots. A little sneaky X factor picks for me. I said Binnington. Also want to throw Marchand out there. What would happen if he scores in this final game?
Yeah.
The Boston fans in Boston, how do they feel about that? That's gotta be a little.
And he scored the winner of the 2016 World Cup, right?
Exactly.
So legacy building.
Keep an eye on him. Also with the States, I'm saying you can't just count out the Bash brothers. Brady and Matthew have been so fun to watch in this tournament. I also think, real quick, do you guys think there's a chance there's more fights in this game, or do you think the fighting's done? I think the fighting has to be. I feel like Americans might want to do it because they could follow a similar script, but Canada's just got to get to playing hockey, right? A
couple things on that. Like, I feel like something that's been lost in how crazy that U.S.-Canada game was is that what the Tkachuk brothers did, and I guess JT Miller too, was super risky in terms of they go to the box. So that's, 2 top 6 guys. JT Miller's another impact player. Who goes to the box for Canada? Hagel. He's obviously looked great this tournament, but ultimately, he's not a top line player for them. And Bennett and Parayko. I mean, you're going to take that trade any day for Canada.
Every day of the week.
And certainly. JT Miller got the only extra penalty, got a cross check. So Canada comes out of that with a power play. They don't convert on it. and they ultimately lose the game. But like, there's a scenario where, you know, the post-game press conference after that is the Tkachuk brothers with their heads hanging low versus high and going, we maybe overdid it with the tough stuff, and we tried to rally the crowd, but it backfired, right? So it's interesting in that respect. And also the second thing to this whole, you know, what's going to happen in the final in terms of fighting is Canada was happy to engage in that, but in that first game, but I don't think it does them much benefit to do it a second time. Like,
especially in Boston,
they're the more skilled team. Yeah, the crowd is not on their side this time. I feel like if anything, they should be trying to draw penalties. Like a Bennett should go, you know, kind of fake out,
give a
you know,
Schmidt
one of those and
yeah.
see what happens. Like, he's really good at drawing penalties, right? So we'll see if that factors in. But no, if I were to guess, I'd say the only chance of there being a fight is if it becomes some kind of a blowout and you know, someone on one of the teams decides, you know,
to get
stupid. Going. Yeah, but otherwise I'd be pretty surprised.
I think too, for Canada's sake, in the way that they built this team, like they didn't build their team to engage in that stuff, and thankfully the Tkachuks can do both. They can fight and they can score. But honestly, watching that first game, the only thing I couldn't stop thinking about is I wish we had Tom Wilson out here.
Oh my gosh.
A guy like that in a game like that is perfect. You don't have that guy out there. Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, they're gritty, but they're not exactly the Tkachuks. I think Canada, it'd be in their best interest to stay away from that.
I will say the two Tkachuk fights I thought were pretty even on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Parayko,
yes,
JT Miller uppercutted himself.
JT Miller punched himself in the face.
That's
and
tough.
It was pretty fun to watch. It was really exciting. I don't know if we'll see it again. I still think it will be very physical, but I will be curious to see if there's any more fights. I want to move over to one more here before we get into your notebook, John, and that's players who can't afford a bad game. There's been players who kind of have been disappointments so far in this tournament. Obviously, one guy who's caught a lot of flack for Canada is your X Factor, Mitch Marner. He obviously scored the big goal, but Leaf fans are going to give their boy some crap if he's not doing anything. But what about you guys? What do you think? Players who can't afford a bad game, one per team, John.
Yeah, Sam Reinhart for Canada, and then I'll go with Austin Matthews for the U.S. So with Reinhart, he gets 3 assists in that Finland game to sort of save himself from being the target of a bunch of criticism, because I feel like the first couple of games, you know, put aside the production, I feel like he was pretty invisible in terms of he's usually such a strong detail game guy. Like the small details, he's all over. I mean, it's kind of his bread and butter. That's how he scores his goals, is by being a connector off the rush, being in the right spot with his stick on the ice for Alex Barkov in Florida. And he just wasn't getting off the wall like he normally does. And he just wasn't doing all those other little things that makes him so effective. So I don't know why that happened. I don't know if the moment was too big for him kind of thing, and he's figured it out. But he's someone I'm keeping an eye on because he's been given a top 6 role. And, you know, Cooper's continued to sort of throw him out there with these incredible players. He's been on the first power play unit. So the opportunity's been there. And we'll see if he capitalizes in this final game, because he's obviously a big-time player. I mean, this is a guy who just won a Stanley Cup, was a huge part of that Panthers run, and, you know, went from having this breakout season where everyone thought, oh, this is just a one-off, to continuing to have a fantastic season this year and being one of the best scorers in the league. So there's no reason why he shouldn't perform well in this final, but, you know, I'm keeping an eye on if he does because of what's happened so far. And then Austin Matthews. So I don't think he's played poorly, but he doesn't have a goal. And if you date back to his time with the Leafs and in the lead up to this tournament, we're now on 8 games without a goal for the best goal scorer of this generation. He hit a crossbar in this tournament. He's been relatively dangerous with Jack Hughes. And he's looked well, you know, with the two-way game. But, you know, is he dealing with something? We got the whole upper body soreness that made him miss that last game against Sweden. There's that factor, but also it's the final. Like, there's no excuses. So I'm expecting, in a way, for him to pop off. Like, I feel like this is setting the stage for a really big signature performance from Matthews. But at the same time, if he doesn't perform, we're back to square one, where it's like the Leafs struggle in the playoffs. Okay, the U.S. lost in the final because Matthews didn't perform to his standards. It's an interesting storyline to follow.
I'm going to be completely honest. At no point in this tournament has Austin Matthews felt like the U.S. captain or the U.S.'s best player. To me. At not one point have I been like, when you think about Team USA, has Austin Matthews been the headline? It's been the Tkachuk brothers. It's been Jack Eichel. It's been Hellebuck. It's been Werenski's been fantastic. Slavin's been great. Gensel's got 5 goals.
Werenski looked really good in that last game.
And what about Matthews? He's got the C, but why? He hasn't really shown a reason why. But stage is set for him, as you're saying. Like, this is, you want to have a big game, you want to prove your doubters wrong. Like, this is the time to do it 100%.
And he's fully capable. I mean, this guy bends the league to his whim as a goal scorer, right?
Yeah.
So I realize that this is like the stiffest competition possible because the Canadian team is just filled with superstars. But hey,
everyone
you
else
gotta
is
rise
dealing
to the
with it.
top.
If you're the top 5, one of the best players in the league,
Yeah.
you should be one of the best players at a tournament like this. You shouldn't be a supplementary player.
McDavid's had a couple of strong performances. He's really carrying the goal scoring for Canada. So
100%. All right, Levi, your players can't afford a bad game.
Yeah, I have your X Factor, Brad Marchand, and I've got Jacob Slavin for the States. So I'll start with Marchand. I think, like I was alluding to before, if this game does go in the gritty direction, that's who they need to lean on. Because, sure, Sam Bennett, Travis Konechny, Seth Jarvis, whoever you want to pick out of those 3 guys, that's what they're kind of there to do. But this is Canada's, premier rat, if you want to, so to speak. He's been doing it for so long, and he's so good at it. And this tournament especially, I've kind of felt like I can tell he's a bit older. You can tell he lost his legs a bit. And so in the game, in the last time they faced off, I thought he was okay, but he just needs to, in Boston too, hopefully we'll ramp him up. He needs to earn his minutes, and he needs to be out there being a pest the way he is. And then for U.S., a guy that cannot afford to have a bad game, especially with the McAvoy injury news, who knows if Quinn Hughes comes in, is Jacob Slavin. He absolutely shut down Canada the last time they played, logged like over 20 minutes. I think he's got 20 minutes in almost all their games so far this tournament, and he's been outstanding. I will say though, so he was +3 in that Canada game, which is incredible considering they only had 3 goals. And against Sweden, they lose last night. He was -2. So this is a guy who it kind of seems like it's clear, like Zach Werenski's going to shut it down. Brock Faber's been really good. Jacob Slavin, for the States to have that same kind of intimidating defensive core that they've had and how sound they've been, he has to play well as he's been playing all tournament. Otherwise, yeah, I think Canada finds a crack, and maybe it's him, and they might start lighting it up.
Fair enough, and that plays right into my who can't afford a bad game. So I'm just going to say both goalies, because if you have a bad game as a goalie, you probably are going to lose. A little cheat code answer from me there. But I agree with both of what you guys are saying. For different reasons, I think like the stakes are higher in terms of public perception when you're talking about an Austin Matthews kind of thing. With the Slavin thing, I think is they just need him to be one of their best players.
I mean, he's arguably the best defenseman in the league. So, okay, this is your shot to, if you're going to go head-to-head with David or McKinnon, like, you already proved it once, prove it again.
Do it again.
Yeah, so I want to change our pace here because I did mention at the start of the show how, John, you were in Montreal and you're talking to all these guys and getting fun little ends and notes and stuff like that. So I want to get into that notebook you got. I want to empty it, brought to you guys by Enterprise. John, what do you have in your notebook from the first leg in Montreal?
Let's first talk about the viewership numbers. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but in the U.S., that ESPN game between Canada and the U.S., crazy numbers. 4.4 million average, and 5.2 million at the peak, which I imagine is like the first couple minutes of the game, right? Like people get texting their friends and saying, you got to watch this. I think it just really underlines how, phenomenal this tournament has been. And we don't have the numbers for Canada yet for that game, the TV numbers, but I would imagine they're on par, maybe even better.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a huge success. And it's just one of those things where we didn't know what to expect in this tournament. And the players, we've said it on the show before, like if the players are invested and they're going all out like they would in the Olympics, people are going to flock to this because it's arguably the best collection of talent the NHL's ever put together. I know we're missing Russia, we're missing, David Pasternak and Leon Draisaitl and all that, but how the game's progressed over the last, say, 9-10 years since we've seen best on best, like it's almost night and day. And after that first game, Drew Doughty's talking about it's the fastest game he's ever played in. This guy's 2-time Cup winner, 2-time gold medalist. He's 35. He's played over 1,100 games. Like he's seen a lot of hockey.
Yeah.
And he's like, it was insane to keep up, kind of skating wise, but also just thinking wise. So I just think the hockey's been so phenomenal. That's my first takeaway, and I understand it's not a hot take, but it's just I wanted to pause and reflect on that a little bit. Now the second part. So Harley and Hagel. I think this has been a coming out party for both of those players. Harley's only played one game, but he was arguably their best defenseman in that game.
Maybe the best player, to be honest.
Yeah, he was really, really good. And, he was on his way to Cabo and then has to come in and join the team in Montreal. there must have been a rust factor, or there should have been. Like, the guy couldn't even practice with a team. It was all very hazy and weird, and it kind of set him up to fail, to be honest. And he did nothing but. And I just love his skating mixed with his physicality and his smarts. Like, he's buried a little bit in Dallas, not only behind Miro Heiskanen, but just market-wise. He doesn't get a ton of attention, but this should give him all the confidence in the world moving forward. And I think we should pencil him in on Canada's team for the Olympics. Yeah. And then Brandon Hagel, I mean, let's put him in pen on that Olympic team, right? He's been phenomenal. Obviously took Matthew Tkachuk's offer to fight and did that WWE style celebration after. That was fantastic. But even beyond that, listen, this guy, he pursues a puck like no other. He's really skilled and probably doesn't get a ton of credit for it. He's really fast and doesn't get a ton of credit for it. Right now, he's tied for third in the NHL in 5-on-5 points, but we don't hear about that. And I understand he plays a ton with Nikita Kucherov, but there's a really good player in there. And as recently as 2018, this guy was considering retiring. He was in junior as an overager, and the Sabres didn't offer him a contract. They drafted him in the 6th round, so he became a free agent. And he was considering becoming a gym teacher. And he's like, okay, I'll give it one more season, my overage year with the Red Deer Rebels, and just popped off plus 100 points. And, kind of the rest is history in terms of how he ends up with the Hawks and then gets traded to the Lightning, goes to a cup final, really, develops a ton of trust from John Cooper. He's on this team, and he hasn't looked out of place at all. If anything, he's been one of those heart and soul players for Canada. Okay, let's talk about John Cooper's USA-Canada memory. So Cooper was asked, 3 or 4 days ago, hey, there's a lot of history between these two clubs, these two nations. What comes to mind? And he told this great story about how he grew up in Prince George, BC, but his mom grew up in San Francisco, so she's American. And so, growing up, it was always the entire family, rooted for Canada, and then mom rooted for the U.S. And, he's of an age where they watched the 1980 Miracle on Ice, and after that, he got his mom a present where it was like this rock, like I guess one of those novelty souvenirs. Got her a rock that had a picture of that 1980 team, and it had a button where you could press it, and it had Al Michaels' "Do You Believe in Miracles?" That classic call on that game. And so he kind of was lamenting how, it was a great present. My mom liked it, but every time his parents got into a fight, she'd go over and press that just to piss off her dad or his dad. And so his dad's like staring him down, like, "Did you really need to do this?" So it's kind of a classic John Cooper story where the guy's got something to say about everything. I mean, anyone who's been following this tournament, if they hadn't already known, knows that this guy's got charisma, he's got personality, and he's going to chime in and get that headline, right? But I thought that personal touch was really nice, and you can just picture yourself being John Cooper.
100%.
Seeing your parents kind of go at it, and then mom sort of using the trump card, so to speak, with that little rock.
Hey, you don't really think about how, because I wasn't alive back then, like you, John, covering the league back then. Right? But when that must have happened, how Canadians must have felt going on. Because for me, the Miracle is kind of just sick. I don't care that it's the States.
Yeah, and they weren't against each other, so it's a little disconnected in terms of that exact correlation. But nevertheless, that was a huge moment for USA Hockey and launched them towards kind of where they are today. One last thing I'll talk about is a note on Sweden. So Joel Eriksson-Ek, tremendous tournament. He scored a goal. He was, shift disturbing, so to speak. Really got under Patrick Laine's skin during that great Finland Sweden match, and just looked like he should have been Sweden's top center. He ends up third in ice time among Swedish forwards. So clearly the coaching staff there liked what they saw. I thought he played better than Zibanejad and Elias Pettersson. Speaking of Pettersson, this was his chance, man, to turn his season around. This was his chance to break free of all this JT Miller drama and just start anew. I thought he was one of the worst players of the round robin.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty invisible. Maybe it's just his playing style doesn't translate. He's very crafty and kind of cerebral, doesn't have much heaviness to him. But you see Mitch Marner, he's able to do it at least in flashes. And they're pretty similar players. So anyways, Pettersson, the change of scenery, this brief change of scenery didn't quite pan out. We'll see what happens down the stretch with the Canucks, but a big storyline coming into this was, how does JT Miller look? How does Elias Pettersson look? I don't think either of them have had great tournaments.
Pettersson's having a bad tournament, and JT Miller's punching himself in the face.
Yeah.
It's been a weird show.
But, I guess one guy's challenges another guy's opportunity or whatever that quote is. And
It's
Eriksson
not
Ek,
that, but it's something like
it's
that.
something along those lines. Eriksson Ek looked really good, and one of those guys that everyone forgets about because he plays for Minnesota and is just sort of like more of a defensive guy. But yeah, those are a few things that pop off the page for me.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. I'm really jealous you got to be there in Montreal. It looked like a lot of fun, and it looks like just like all the players and the coaches and everyone involved they were being very open about how they're feeling about the tournament. It's very exciting stuff. And it's got the fans and just the media and everybody covering it just super bought in. I think a lot of people were on edge before this tournament. Nobody's on the edge anymore. Everyone's ready for Thursday.
I will say one thing, too, just speak on that note, because I meant to say this at the top of the show. Generally, like, how many times in the history of pro sports that we've seen where the NHL and other sports have a conflict of interest on the same day? You look at the playoffs with the NBA or whatever it is. Like, this is the first time where we've seen the NHL. It was such a blessing that it came on the same weekend as the NBA All-Star stuff because, oh my gosh, like having those two complete polar opposites going on at the same time, it probably grew the game more than like we ever could have imagined. I think that's just like so important to note that they bodied the NBA that weekend.
Yeah, that's the thing about what I was trying to get across with Werenski and the messages he was getting. Like, players were hyped up that there were people tuning out the NBA and we're into the NHL. Like, we got to give a lot of credit to the NHLPA here because, we love to sort of like just default to the NHL good stuff, but like the NHLPA was organizing this too, and without the players' investment, like this isn't what it is. If they thought it was an all-star game and showed up and just kind of went through the motions, I think we'd be laughing at the product. But it's been the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And it's been really important for them as a group to have international hockey, and they finally got through to the NHL that like this is a non-negotiable, basically, to use your word. And here we are, and we're setting up for this just absolutely electric final, and being in the building for Canada USA round 1 was something I'll never forget. Like even in the moment, I'm like, I'm never gonna forget this. This is unbelievable, unreal, surreal. Like use an adjective, which one you got. And I would imagine, like it would be very difficult for the final to disappoint us, right?
Yeah, unless it's like a 5-0 game.
Yeah.
Like there's potential for this to be one of the greatest hockey games ever played. There's potential for me maybe the greatest. And I said, like last week, I said my perfect script would be for the U.S. and Canada to split these two games because then you got 1-1, and then we're doing it in the Olympics. We're gonna settle it there. I said in that as my example was Canada winning the first one, losing the second. I'm glad if that is the situation, they lose the first one because I'd rather win the entire thing or see them win the entire thing. But honestly, I've just been so glad at the product that the Four Nations has been. It's been fantastic. We're getting close to the end of our show here, but we still got time for trivia, and that is a top shelf staple. We got to get into it. And you were gone last week, John, and I finally took a dub. But Levi was actually going up against me. Now he's back to making the question. So, Levi, what you got for us this week?
Do you want me to? I'll do this for you. We weren't sure if we were going to give Aidan this. Oh, you gave it to yourself already.
I did sneak the tick on when nobody was watching.
We weren't sure because it was a bit of a Mickey Mouse win, if you want to say that. But, yeah, credit to Aidan. He beat me. But it's funny. You were talking about this potentially being one of the best games we'll ever see. I wanted to turn back the clock to...
Don't forget it. It's right here. You'll never wear it, Levi. You'll never wear this. This is me right now.
That's sad, man. I'm just
sorry.
The confidence,
flattering.
One win.
Yeah, I gotta enjoy this
one
for the next
win
few
over
minutes
the
before
host.
Matisz smokes me. So,
but no. So yeah, you're talking about this is one of the best games we might ever see. I wanted to go back to probably the best game I've ever seen, and it happens to be the last time Canada USA faced off in the finals in a best-on-best tournament. Obviously, I'm talking about 2010 Vancouver Olympics. Very simple trivia today. I'm going to give you guys both 3 strikes, so you can strike out here, and the other guy can go off and win. But I have the scoring sheet from this game. You're going to go back and forth and tell me every guy that had a goal or had an assist in this hockey game, and whoever has the most at the end of this wins. There is 11 answers total.
okay.
11 answers, and we'll start with you, Aidan, because you're
And
feeling...
I can go anywhere here?
You're on your high horse. Yeah, you can go anywhere here. You just say a player's name. Just one player.
Give me Sidney Crosby.
Sidney Crosby. Bro, impressive stuff. Yes, he has 1 goal in this game. The golden goal, of course. Who could forget? We go to you, John.
Jerome McGinley, you got the assist on that golden goal.
Jerome McGinley had the assist on the golden goal. There you go. 1-1.
Okay, I'm already in trouble. I'm not gonna lie. I was 10 years old or 11 years old at this tournament or something like that.
I'm in trouble too.
Zach Parise, was he involved?
Zach Parise,
nice.
25 seconds left in the third, tied things up for the States. He is the goal scorer there. Nicely done. Back to you, John.
I feel like Drew Doughty got an assist in this game.
Drew Doughty did not have an assist in this game. Did not have an assist. That's strike one for John. Go back to you, Aidan.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with the States and go with Patty Kane.
Patty Kane. I'm only giving you 1 point, but he's on here twice. 2 assists in this game on both of the U.S. goals. Kind of crazy he's not there this year, but I mean, it's fine. They're doing okay, I think. Back to you, John. 2-1, Aidan.
Oh man, who got a goal? I'm trying to remember how.
I thought this might be a lot more cerebral, I guess. Like this stuff's ingrained in my head.
Really?
This
You just
game,
got it dialed
the way it's scored, 3-2, yeah.
You know, I should just watch it sometime. I feel
Oh,
like
I watch it, all the highlights all the time. There's like a 3-minute video on YouTube.
Let's see here. So
Well, John,
Joe
thanks.
Sakic.
Joe Sakic was not on the team in 2010.
Joe Sakic was- yeah.
I don't know why
He's
I thought
not
he was
on the team in 2010. No.
When did he
I think it's
retire?
20
A few years.
2006.
2006 at least.
Brutal.
2 strikes for
Um,
John.
Okay, I'm
Back to 8.
feeling kind of good right now.
Back to 8.
It wasn't at this tournament that he did. Sorry, it was at this tournament. Wasn't the game where Shea Weber put one through the net? But do you remember he did that? Like he
Yes.
slap
It
shot
was
through
it,
the net?
yeah, it was
I don't
at
know. I
this
was just thinking that was sweet. That wasn't in this game though. I am gonna go with. I'm gonna guess the American one. Was it Pominville?
Was not Pominville. Strike one for you. Not Pominville.
Duncan Keith, is he on there?
Duncan Keith's on
Okay,
here.
now we're
Nicely
talking.
done, John. 2 strikes. He's got another one. I believe it's 2-2 now for you guys. Yeah, he had the secondary assist on Canada's second goal.
All right, Corey Perry.
Corey Perry. He's the goal scorer
That
of
was a
that
good
second
one.
goal. Very nicely done. 3-2 Aidan. John gets one wrong. This thing's all over. Aidan gets another win, believe it or
I
not.
don't know why I can only think of defensemen, but Brent Seabrook.
Brent Seabrook is incorrect. There was no more defensemen to have points in this. You want to go out on top? Get
Yeah,
one
it
more
was
right?
the other American goal. Shoot, how many other American players was Getzlaff on the score sheet?
Getzlaff was. He assisted on that Perry goal.
Yeah,
that's correct.
It
You
was
got
Taves
another.
on the score sheet.
Taze scored the first goal.
This guy's
Yeah.
on a roll.
Yeah, come on.
Anything left?
I'm hot right now. No, I actually don't even remember who. I have no idea who the other American goal could have been. Was it like a defenseman or was it forward?
It was a forward. It was
Yeah,
a
I don't know.
forward.
Then you can
Yeah,
just give it
it's,
to us.
you know what? Better
Dustin
that you,
Brown?
better that you tap out. Not Dustin Brown. That's a better pull. He was on that team. Ryan Kessler scored the American goal,
Yeah.
and then we had a Jamie Langenbrunner assist in there, and a Mike Richards assist in there.
Okay.
So a couple
All right.
old heads, but you guys didn't do terrible.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't gonna scoop the other ones up there. But
No.
I'll take
Nice.
the
Aidan
W
gets a
here.
win. Aidan
That
gets
was-
another win.
Look,
That was well done.
That's a dub for me there. The second one you can second.
I'm supposed to
Italian
get the
thing.
old throwback one.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that's too
yeah.
recent.
But I've got
for you.
Joe
That's-
Sakic in my
That's
head
too
for some
recent for you, Matisz. We
Too
should have
recent,
talked about who scored
apparently.
in the Miracle on Ice. You probably would have had those ones.
The 87 Canada Cup. Yeah.
All right. Before we finish off today, I do want to just get our final game predictions in here. Give it to me. We'll start with Levi.
You know what? We had on the screen there 3-2 Canada. I think it's 3-2 Canada. again.
Overtime or regulation?
I think in this time in regulation, I can envision, the last minute of this game is just mayhem, and we're thinking Binnington something's going to go in. But I think Canada 3-2. It just feels right.
John?
Canada 2-1
Oh, even
with
lower scoring.
McDavid scoring both goals.
Oh wow!
I do think if it goes to overtime, a McDavid winner is totally in the script.
We never talked
completely.
about how in the Sweden game they had Makar, McDavid, and McKinnon, and it was just like literally the three players you
Yeah.
would pick in the world
Yes.
to be in
To be
3
on-
and 3.
Yes.
And McKinnon went.
McKinnon
back
just
and forth,
played, but
back
it was
and forth.
3-on-1.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was like there was a 3-on-1 and he played it 1-on-1. But whatever, they won the game anyways,
Yeah.
so that's all right. My final prediction is I think if Canada's going to win the game, there's going to have to be more than a couple goals, to be honest. I don't think they can win a close game like that. I don't think the goaltending battle will play their way. I do think they win the game, though. I think they win it 4-3 in overtime.
Oh,
Connor
no.
McDavid, OT winner.
We're all on
Look
Canada.
at us homers.
Yeah, look at us, homers. What am I
Oh,
going to do?
man.
Sit up here and say I think the United States are going to win this game?
Yeah, you're right.
And then have to just look everybody in the face and be like, oh yeah, I was on the States. Like, no, I can't do that. But we will be back Friday to break down that game. We will break down the entire tournament. We will be talking Olympics. We'll be talking roster. We'll be talking all the things that went right and went wrong for all the different countries at the tournament. So make sure you come back for then. But Thursday night, enjoy it. Canada and United States on the biggest stage. It'd be awesome. For everyone here at Top Shelf, John Matisz, Levi Smith, and myself, Aidan Thakkar, and everyone over at Enterprise who brought to you guys this episode today, we'll see you next time.